Okay, everyone. I did not complete the formal tutorial in full Python. Right now, I'm going to complete it by taking the full OOP, that is Objective Oriented Programming pattern in Python. It is very important to understand it and how to run it. It is very, very important. So, let me get started immediately. So, for creating a class in Python, create we have to write what we call class. This to declare what we are creating right now is class. Then we have to give it any name that you want. Let me give it the index, which is the name of the class. I like to give the name of the file, the name of the class I'm creating inside it. This is it's very nice to understand what we are writing if you do it in that way. Yes. So actually, what is the essence of class? In the first place, and the essence of class is to create a blocks of code that give us the ability to be reuse it. And virtually we can do this in procedural function too. But what is the benefit of Python class that makes people compulsory to be known is that they have some features that procedural function does not have. And the issue is that it is very good in structuring your programs in a way that other programmers will understand what you're doing. And when it comes to productional level, you have to create your application in objective oriented way, which is going to structure it because when we are talking about production, it's different from what you are just writing a procedural way. So there is a lot of things that is going to go on, especially when you are running a testing for your application. Procedural pattern is very acidic in that level, so it won't work well. And there are a lot of benefits also beside it that you'll be learning more and more when you understand it. So let's start with creating a function in class. So class have other things that you can do in without class. So class have everything, but it is arranged. That is why they call it class. It is arranged. So in this case, let us create a functions too, which we will normally create in procedural Python. Let us see how it works in class. So what we have to do is we have to just write it normal writing it. Say method class. You can create any name for it and give it any name you want. So self, then let me say print a um class method. So now we have created our class. How can we now call our class outside the Python class? There's one thing they call instantiating. So to call this Python class, to call it outside so that it will run, it is when it is when instantiating come to a role here. So in this kind of case, we have to instantiate. What is instantiate? Instantiating is the way of creating a variable and assign the address of a class to the variable so that anytime we want to call or do anything with the class, we can go to the variable and ask for the address, then we can do what we want to do to it. So it is a reference. So without me saying only, let me just create class reference. I'm using this English variable in order for you to understand what I'm writing. You can write it in any name that you want. So let me call it index. Right now we have instantiated it. So anytime we want to communicate with this, we can go to this direct and do what we want to do. So for example, I want to run this method inside the class. So I can just do like this dot. This dot method is used to run, to edit, to do a lot of things in a class method. So method in class, then let me test it. You can see it's shown to us, hey, I'm class method. So, but there is something also that you will normally be seeing in Python class, which is init method. But wait, what is init method? Because a lot of words in program language used to confuse people. This is what makes them may get it hard or have it hard to understand what they are doing. So init method, it is just what you can call initializer as the word init. It is a block, it is the block of code that is going to run before any other things is run in your application, in your class rather. So like if you work with Java, Java have something that they call main method, which is any application you are creating, the main method is the one that will first run. So I'm just using an example. We are not doing Java now. So in Python, if you want to do something like that, that is if they run your class, what will first run, which is we are calling constructor. So we can call it constructor, we can call it initializer, which is that when they run your class, it is one that will first run. It is not a method that you can call outside, it is inbuilt inside the Python class. So if you want to create it, it is also a method too. So you can call it double underscore init double underscore, then you define it. So you have finally create your constructor now. So anytime you call your index class or any class you create, this initializer is one that will first call. So it is very useful for inserting the data to attribute in a class, manipulating the data, doing some sort of things in the data, and don't forget it doesn't return any value. Yes, initializer doesn't return any value because it is not a general method, it is a inbuilt method for the class. So it doesn't return value. So let me show you that without we calling it, it can actually run immediately anytime we call it. So anytime we call the class rather. So let me say called. So let's run it here. You see, it's called first, even we did not call it at all. So that is to tell you what the initializer is for. For example, let us create attribute in the class. Let us create attribute of let's say self dot name equal to team Adura. But wait, team Adura. What is this self is used for? You'll be seeing that in class in Java in Python rather sorry in class in Python, the first parameter to put inside your Python class, will be owned by Python. You cannot use it. And it is advisable to call it self. So first parameter in your Python method will be owned by Python, not by you. So the first parameter will be owned and will be used within the class. So and when it's come to init method, it also have its own self first parameter that is owned by Python class, which is this index class. So anytime you now want to create a variable, we can call it attribute in class. It is also a variable, but in class we call it attribute rather. So creating attributes, let me be using word variable so that you won't be misunderstanding it. Creating this variable that will be able to be used among other methods and other things in class, we use self. So this self will share this data to other method in class so that anytime they want to use any data you assign to this, they will just call self dot the name of the variable, then they will be able to work with the data. So that is the work of this self. This self is used to create a attribute so that you'll be able to work, to be able to go through other methods in class. For example, let us say let us say let me call it my name is Let me put this self dot name. You can see that we did not declare it inside here, but we are going to run inside because we have already called it self. So self give it ability to be able to be used outside this function. So it is a global attribute that will be able to use in other function. So let's test it out. You see, my name is Tim Adura. So it gives us the ability to run it outside the init method. So that is one of the usefulness of init method. It is used to assign a value so that other people can use it. And don't forget again, don't forget the first parameter in your method in class was owned by the class or by the Python class. You can't use it. So for example, I want to create a parameter. I want to add a parameter to here. Let's say age. So age, years old. So this age that follow this self will be a number one in a parameter. So because this self is not for you, so it will not count. So if you want to pass the argument into this method now, you just pass it. Let me say 23. Then let's run it and check what we have. You see, I'm 23 years old. So the first parameter it is not for you, but any other one you can pass it is for you. And actually you can also pass a parameter to your class, which is maybe you want you want to be able to be passing some parameter to the class directly. You can also do it by assigning to the init class. So the init class represent the class. So the init method represent the class rather. So you can just say uh, address, for example. And if you want to get this, because the main purpose of using init method is to distribute data. Main purpose distribute data or call function that we want to be called anytime they call the class. So to make this address accessible for other function, you can just say self dot address, because in normal sense this init cannot use it by itself, so you have to distribute it within the class. So now any address we put inside here will be called Olomi Omiyale Ibadan. So this is address of some one environment. So let me put it here. I'm living at self.address. So as you can see right here, anytime they call the class, they give it this value. Is going to create a self.address and is going to assign the address to it. It is not a compulsory thing for you to write its address. You can, let me just write address para so that you understand what I mean. Para. I think this is no. This is your Respera. So it doesn't matter for you to write the same thing here. You can declare a variable in any name you want, but the value that they are going to be passing will be from here. So you have to assign it to the variable that you want it to go globally. So that is it. You can change it, you can make it anyone. It is not compulsory to have self as address and this one too to be addressed, but it is very advisable to do it in that way so that we will know that we are connecting to each other directly. So that is why most tutorial we see they use the same name. But if you wanted to use any other name, you can actually use it. It is not a compulsory pattern. So let's test it out. You see, my name is Timadora, I'm 23 years old, and I'm living in better. So as you can see, all is working fine. But what are the sweetness of class that we are seeing we have? So let's do something they call inherit. Inherit in class is, let me do something like this. Let me clear all this. Inherit in class is a creating of class. Like there is a class that was created maybe by you or something, or in a library, and the class have some function, very nice function, and you don't want to rewrite the class, or maybe you cannot even rewrite the class, you cannot even rewrite the functions inside the class, you just want to inherit the function, everything inside the class. How can we do it? How can we use some created class that you don't want to rewrite? You want to make all the functions, you want to let it to be useful in another class without you rewriting it, because that's one of the purpose of class actually. One of the purpose of class is to reduce the boilerplate of code. So in this case, this type of things, let me say print an index. Let us assume that this index have a yeah, let's assume that this index have some nice type of code that you want to inherit. So let's just say another class which is child. You can call it any name you want actually, don't forget. Let's say in this class I don't want to do what? I want to let it print out index. Like I want to use index, or let me give you this kind of things. Let me say self dot number equal to this. Let's say this is his number of one person, phone number of one person. So you want to use this number, but know you don't actually know how to write this number. Maybe it's very complex. I'm just for instance. So what you can do here is that you can just create open bracket and close bracket, then you just write the name of the class you want to inherit. Right now you have already inherited the class. So let now say you define your own method. You say call it in any name you want, because you are dealing with method right now. Then you do what? Print AI inherit it. Then I think it should work fine. Oh, nothing. Okay, I haven't instantiated it actually. So after we have created it, what we do here is that this is the class that have the complex things that we want to inherit, or something that we want to inherit. Um, okay, this is the class that it inherits the first one, and the class that inherits the first one actually it inherit this. So what do you actually inherit? So I can just say self dot um self dot the number. You see, this class does not have the number actually, but because I've inherited it have the access to the number. So let's instantiate it. As I told you earlier, instantiate is the referencing of a class. So let's say instantiator. Just give it a random name. You can give it any name you want to when you are creating a class. So let's say child. Okay, dot. Instead of me to be writing it, I just want to write it. You can write it in this way too. I want to call this method. Then let's check our code. You see, I'm index A, I inherit it. 9 2 stuff like that. But okay, because I use this is supposed to be string because of the you see everything right. So this class doesn't have this number, but it inherited from this. That is why we have the ability to use it in another class. There are a lot of cool stuff actually in class that you can do more research on. But I think inherit and creating constructor is the most used one in Python class. So with this simple, very simple, not big things, if you actually go through it backward the video and try to understand it, you know that you have already conquered 60% of your class understanding, even 70%, because this is what convinces people a lot. They don't understand what is it. And as I told you earlier, this self you can write any other word to represent it, but it is like it is the most common name, like most common concept in Python that people use. That is why we all use self. You can name it any name that you want, but it must be the first parameter that you give to the Python method or the Python initializer. So the first parameter we own by what? By the Python class. For example, let me just call it this. I normally used to use it if you come from the world of Java, C++, and other stuff like that. This is the most common word there. So let me still run it and see whether it's going to work. You see, it worked perfect. So the first, sorry. So the first parameter will be owned by it. So this first parameter is the one that we are going to be using to create, maybe create attributes that can be used in other time in the class, maybe doing other cool stuff like that. I think this small um, objective oriented programming tutorial will help you a little, despite it is not that deep, but I think as a beginner you need something very small so that it will enter your brain and you understand it. I think I've explained this in deeper that you should understand. If you want me to create a very large one, because my channel is still small now, I want to create a very large and deep one, I can do that for you too. But thanks you for taking your time to watch my video. Thank you.